Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Vadia, and my theory for literary criticism was on the psychoanalytic theory. So, what is the psychoanalytic theory? Well, first off, the psychoanalytic theory was started by Sigmund Freud, and he's one of the most famous psychologists that we've known. And psychoanalysis deals with the unconscious mind, which was all that Sigmund Freud was about. This theory was generated from three major sources or influences, being one, the philosophical speculations about the unconscious psychological phenomenon, two, early ideas about treating mental disorders, and three, the evolutionary theory, which all contributed into Sigmund Freud generating this new theory. This theory basically talks about the organization of personality and the dynamics of personality development, which all in all contribute towards psychoanalysis. So in easier terms, basically this talks about the unconscious mind and how it contributes towards each person's personality and why people perform certain actions which they do. So there were a number of contributors for this theory. In fact, there were psychologists from all over the world that contributed towards Sigmund Freud's research and his theories, and I'm just going to name a few. Sigmund Freud was the main one, and that's why he's known as the father of this theory, but there were other major names, which included Anna Freud, which was actually his daughter, who helped conduct the research as well, and then Erik Erikson, Erich Fromm, and Carl Jung, which are all major psychologists who had their opinions and their inputs on these theories, which helped Sigmund Freud develop his psychoanalysis theory and how it worked and why it worked the way it did. So there were a few major discoveries from this theory which were revolutionary in the psychology world. So the first was the unconscious mind, the desires, and the defenses. So our mind has a bunch of defense mechanisms and desires. So the discovery basically stated that our childhood influences our unconscious mind, which influences our actions. And as children, we go through 5 stages, which every child goes through, which are the oral, anal, phallic, latent, and genital, which are basically through the mouth and then touching everything, and then hormones, and basically talks about how as we grow and age, this is how we develop as children. And then the second major discovery he had was the 3 parts of our unconscious mind, which are the id, ego, and superego. This is discovery that our mind had 3 parts which have different purposes, being that the id is worked off pleasure, the ego is all rationality, and the superego is about right versus wrong, as you can see. And then the third major discovery he had was the Oedipus complex. And this basically shows a strong bond that children form with their parents, and which actually leads to the children falling in love with the opposite gender parent. And then I have 3 diagrams here demonstrating all the things that are happening. And then this was Freud's model of the id, the ego, and superego, and how they balance against each other. And then I want to finish off with a quote from Sigmund Freud, which we can apply to our everyday lives, and shows its importance and why he's known as the father of psychoanalytic theory, which basically states that unexpressed emotions will never die. They're buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways, which basically talks about repression and how unexpressed emotions that we don't exhibit aren't just going to go away, and they're actually suppressed into our unconscious mind, and our unconscious mind will determine our actions. So if we don't express our emotions, they're going to build up inside of us and eventually be demonstrated through our actions, which can lead to a number of consequences, and why it's such a big problem. And this can be applied to our everyday lives, as there's many, I'm sure everyone has emotions that they don't express, and deep down they're stored up in our unconscious mind, and we don't even realize it until our actions exhibit this frustration or anger or a number of different emotions that can be demonstrated because of this theory. This is how, and I'd like to conclude with my sources in MLA format. I hope you understood the psychoanalytic theory better. I had a great time, and thank you so much.